What happens when someone in power abuses it against the wrong person? This story will leave you speechless. Imagine this: a peaceful day in a quiet neighborhood takes a shocking turn. Alicia Johnson, a young, confident black woman, walks into a local supermarket, unaware of the storm brewing just outside. She's not just anyone, she's the daughter of the town's mayor, known for her grace and boldness. But there's someone watching her closely. Enter Officer Derek Sanders. Known for his arrogance and a history of questionable actions, he's a man who often oversteps his authority. Today, his eyes are fixed on Alicia, and his intentions are far from noble. What happens next is a clash of power, prejudice, and fate. But there's one thing Derek doesn't know: Alicia isn't someone to mess with. Stick around to see how justice takes an unforgettable turn. On an ordinary afternoon, Alicia Johnson walked into a small, cozy supermarket on a peaceful street corner. Dressed casually, she exuded confidence, her every move reflecting the strength inherited from her father, the town's respected mayor. She was there for a simple purpose: to pick up personal items, just like anyone else. But life had other plans. Outside the supermarket, Officer Derek Sanders was on patrol. Tall, imposing, and known for his arrogant demeanor, Derek had built a reputation as a man who thrived on his badge. This wasn't the first time he'd been accused of misusing his authority, but his actions had always been swept under the rug. When Derek spotted Alicia, his gaze lingered. Something about her caught his attention, though it wasn't her presence that bothered him. Prejudice, arrogance, and a misplaced sense of superiority fueled his thoughts. As Alicia moved through the aisles, blissfully unaware of Derek's presence, the peaceful tone of the day began to shift. The calm atmosphere carried an undercurrent of tension, building slowly but unmistakably. What started as an ordinary day for Alicia was about to escalate into a confrontation that would shake the community and reveal the dangerous consequences of unchecked authority. Alicia Johnson walked into the local supermarket with a list of essentials in hand. She moved through the aisles with ease, her confident demeanor turning heads, though she barely noticed. Her life, as the daughter of Mayor James Johnson, had taught her to carry herself with grace and strength. Today was no different, or so she thought. Outside, Officer Derek Sanders was finishing his patrol when he spotted Alicia entering the store. Something about her confidence, her calmness, seemed to irritate him. With an air of superiority, he decided to follow her inside, his mind already working on ways to assert his authority. Inside, Alicia was browsing the cereal aisle when Derek approached. Shopping for something special, he asked with a smirk, his tone dripping with mockery. Alicia turned, instantly recognizing the officer's tone for what it was. "Just minding my business, officer." "Is there a problem?" she replied, her voice steady. Derek chuckled, taking a step closer. "Problem? No, just making sure you're not up to anything suspicious." His words hung in the air, clearly meant to provoke. Alicia didn't flinch. "Suspicious? Like picking out cereal? Or do you say that to everyone you meet?" Her calm but firm response caught Derek off guard, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. "Well, you never know. Some people just don't belong here," he said, his voice turning sharp and pointed. Alicia's eyes narrowed. "Care to explain what you mean by that?" she asked, her tone cutting through the growing tension. Derek leaned in closer, his voice lowering but his words growing more venomous. "You people always think you can just walk in anywhere like you own the place." The insult landed hard, but Alicia refused to give him the reaction he was looking for. "You're out of line, officer. If you're trying to intimidate me, it's not going to work." By now, a few customers had paused their shopping, sensing the tension between the two. Derek noticed the growing audience, but didn't care. In fact, it seemed to fuel his arrogance. "You think you can talk to me like that? Maybe you need a little reminder of who's in charge here," he spat, his hand moving to his holster. With a dramatic flourish, Derek pulled out his gun, not pointing it at her, but holding it in plain sight. Gasps echoed through the store as customers froze in fear. Some ducked behind shelves, while others whispered nervously among themselves. Alicia, however, stood her ground, her eyes locked on Derek. "You've crossed the line," she said firmly, her voice unwavering. "You think that gun makes you powerful? All it does is show how weak you really are." The air in the supermarket was thick with tension. Derek's face reddened with anger as he took another step toward her. But Alicia didn't back down. She remained calm, knowing exactly what to do next. Alicia reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and dialed her father. Her movements were deliberate, almost defiant, as Derek sneered. "Who do you think you're calling? Your boyfriend?" "No," Alicia said simply. "I'm calling my father. You've made a grave mistake." In his office, Mayor James Johnson was in the middle of a meeting when his phone buzzed. Seeing Alicia's name on the screen, he excused himself and answered. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" he asked, immediately sensing her calm urgency. "Dad, I'm at the supermarket, and an officer is harassing me. It's escalating." "You need to do something," Alicia said, her voice controlled but firm. James's jaw tightened. "Stay where you are. I'll handle this." He hung up and immediately called Sheriff Robert King, a trusted ally. "Robert, we have a situation. One of your officers is at the supermarket harassing my daughter. I need a team there now." Robert didn't hesitate. "Consider it done, James. I'll send a convoy immediately." Meanwhile, back at the supermarket, Derek continued his verbal tirade, oblivious to Alicia's identity. "Whoever you're calling won't save you. People like you never learn their place." Alicia, unbothered, placed her phone back in her pocket and crossed her arms. "You're going to regret those words," she said calmly. Derek laughed. "Regret? You're all talk. Let's see how tough you are when no one comes to help." But Alicia remained steady, her eyes meeting his with a quiet confidence. She knew help was on the way. Within minutes, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. Derek's expression faltered for the first time, but he quickly masked it with more bravado. "What's this? Did you call for backup?" A convoy of police cars pulled up outside, and Sheriff King himself stepped out, flanked by several officers. The customers, still watching the scene unfold, murmured among themselves as the tension reached its peak. Sheriff King entered the store and immediately spotted Derek and Alicia. His face hardened as he took in the situation. "Officer Sanders, put the weapon away. Now," he ordered, his voice firm and authoritative. Derek hesitated, clearly caught off guard. "Sheriff, I was just—" "Enough," King interrupted. "We'll discuss this outside. Step away from Ms. Johnson." Derek's eyes widened. "Johnson? As in?" "Yes," Alicia said, her voice steady. "I'm the mayor's daughter. And you've just made the biggest mistake of your career." The weight of her words sank in as Derek realized the gravity of the situation. Sheriff King escorted him out of the store, leaving Alicia standing tall amidst the stunned onlookers. Justice was already unfolding, and Alicia knew this was only the beginning. The parking lot outside the supermarket buzzed with activity as the convoy arrived. A sleek black SUV pulled up, and Mayor James Johnson stepped out, his face a mask of calm fury. Flanking him were Sheriff Robert King and a small team of security personnel. The crowd of onlookers parted, their whispers growing louder as the mayor entered the store. Inside, Alicia stood tall amidst the tension, her composed demeanor unwavering. Derek Sanders, however, was visibly unsettled as he realized the magnitude of what was unfolding. "Officer Sanders," Mayor James's voice boomed across the store, commanding everyone's attention. "Step forward. Now." Derek hesitated, his arrogance faltering under the weight of the mayor's presence. He straightened his posture and took a step forward, trying to salvage his authority. "Sir, this is a misunderstanding," he began, his tone defensive. James raised a hand, cutting him off. "A misunderstanding? My daughter called me, terrified, saying you pulled a gun on her." Care to explain that? I was doing my job, Derek said, his voice losing its confidence. She was being uncooperative and disrespectful. Alicia interjected, her voice clear and steady. Uncooperative? All I did was stand my ground when you decided to harass me. Your comments were racist and demeaning. The crowd murmured in agreement as several witnesses stepped forward. A middle-aged woman clutching her shopping basket spoke up. I saw everything, Mr. Mayor. This officer was out of line from the moment he walked in. Another man chimed in, holding up his phone. I recorded the whole thing. You can see for yourself what happened. Sheriff Robert King took the phone and watched the video, his expression growing graver with every passing second. Derek shifted uneasily, sweat forming on his brow as the weight of the evidence began to press down on him. Officer Sanders, Sheriff King said after a moment, his voice cold and steady. The footage is damning. Your comments and actions are indefensible. You've abused your authority and violated the trust placed in you as an officer of the law. Derek's face turned red as he tried to defend himself. I was provoked. She disrespected me. James stepped forward, his anger barely contained. Disrespected you? She's a citizen of this town and my daughter. Even if she weren't, your behavior is unacceptable. This isn't just about her, it's about your repeated abuse of power and blatant racism. That ends today. Sheriff King nodded solemnly. Officer Sanders, you are hereby ordered to surrender your badge and weapon. You're suspended effective immediately, pending a full investigation. The room fell silent as Derek's face crumpled. Reluctantly, he removed his badge and handed it over, followed by his gun. The once confident officer now stood deflated and humiliated, his career crumbling before his eyes. As Derek was escorted out, the crowd erupted into applause. Alicia looked to her father, who placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You did the right thing by standing up to him, James said quietly. Now, let's make sure justice is served. Derek Sanders' protests echoed through the supermarket parking lot as he was led away by Sheriff King's deputies. You can't do this to me. I've served this town for years, he shouted, his desperation palpable. Sheriff King turned to him, his voice firm. And in those years, you've tarnished the badge you wear. Today, you answer for it. Back inside the store, Mayor James addressed the gathered crowd. His tone was somber yet resolute. What happened here today is unacceptable. Abuse of power and racism have no place in this town or anywhere else. As mayor, I will ensure that this officer is held accountable. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, headlines blared across local and national media, officers suspended after harassing mayor's daughter, racism in uniform exposed, and brave woman stands up against police misconduct. Alicia's calm bravery in the face of Derek's intimidation became the focal point of the narrative. Interviews and articles praised her courage, with many calling her an inspiration. Social media buzzed with hashtags like #JusticeForAlicia and #AccountabilityMatters. For Derek, the fallout was swift and severe. An internal investigation uncovered a pattern of misconduct in his record, including previous complaints of excessive force and inappropriate behavior. His suspension quickly turned into termination, and legal charges were filed against him for threatening Alicia with a firearm and violating her civil rights. At a press conference, Mayor James addressed the community. Standing beside him were Sheriff King and Alicia. This is a pivotal moment for our town, James began. We have to confront uncomfortable truths about those entrusted to protect us. Change starts here, and it starts now. Alicia stepped forward to speak, her voice steady but emotional. What happened to me isn't just my story, it's a story shared by countless others who face discrimination and abuse every day. I stood my ground not just for myself, but for everyone who's been made to feel powerless. This is our fight for justice. The crowd erupted into applause, her words resonating deeply. Derek's legal proceedings became a public spectacle. He pleaded not guilty, claiming he acted in self-defense, but the video evidence and witness testimonies painted a starkly different picture. The jury deliberated for only a few hours before finding him guilty of misconduct and criminal intimidation. He was sentenced to several years in prison, his career and reputation in ruins. For Alicia and her family, justice was more than just Derek's conviction, it was the promise of systemic change. Mayor James announced sweeping reforms in police training and accountability, ensuring no officer could misuse their power without consequences. Alicia's courage became a rallying cry for others to stand up against injustice. Her story was shared in classrooms, community centers, and even national forums, a testament to the strength of one person's resolve. In the end, what began as an ordinary trip to the supermarket became a turning point, not just for Alicia, but for an entire community. The aftermath of the incident was more than just a victory for Alicia, it was a wake-up call for the entire community. Standing on the steps of City Hall, Mayor James Johnson addressed a crowd of reporters and citizens. His voice carried the weight of both frustration and hope. "This incident is a stark reminder of the work we still have to do," he began. "Racism and abuse of power are not isolated problems. They are systemic, and it's our responsibility to root them out. As mayor, I am committed to pushing forward meaningful reforms in law enforcement to ensure accountability and build trust between officers and the people they serve." The mayor outlined new measures, including mandatory bias training, stricter oversight of officer conduct, and a public hotline for reporting misconduct. His words were met with applause, signaling the community's readiness for change. Alicia stepped up next, her calm demeanor commanding attention. "What happened to me was unacceptable," she said. "But it's not just about me. It's about everyone who has ever felt powerless in the face of injustice. Standing up for what's right isn't easy, but it's necessary. Change doesn't happen unless we demand it." Her words resonated deeply, inspiring many to take action. Alicia emphasized the importance of speaking out against injustice, encouraging the crowd to hold their leaders accountable and push for equality. The story concluded on an uplifting note, with Mayor James wrapping up the press conference. "This isn't just a story about one woman's courage, it's about a community coming together to demand better. Let this be a turning point, not just for our town, but for all who believe in justice and equality." As the camera crews packed up and the crowd began to disperse, Alicia looked out at the sea of faces, knowing that her actions had sparked a movement. In the days that followed, the incident was shared far and wide, becoming a rallying cry for justice. The fight was far from over, but Alicia's courage reminded everyone that standing up for what's right can inspire change. The closing message was clear: racism and abuse of power must end. Share this story to spread awareness and inspire others to join the fight for justice and equality.